So, welcome to our first, shall we say, flipped experience. I am Mrs. Sully, and what I'm going to be doing is talking to you from my rocker in my house about the different kinds of vocabulary that you need to be aware of in terms of reading short story. So, let's start with the first part of short story in terms of the Freytag triangle. We studied this in What's a Story, and the Freytag triangle starts off with the introduction. The introduction, in the introduction, the author has an opportunity to set the stage for the whole story. They give you the setting, the characters, the main characters. Sometimes they even give you a little foreshadowing in terms of the problem the character faces. After the introduction, or another word is exposition, is rising action. And this is where the tension in the story really builds. It is where you find the problem that the main character faces. You find different plot events that lead up to a big moment. So it really just builds the tension of the story. And let's remember that the main character, another name for the main character is protagonist. And a protagonist is a character that everything happens to. So all the problems are heaped onto the protagonist. After rising action comes the climax. And the climax of the story is that big moment. Now, sometimes the big moment doesn't feel like a big moment. Sometimes the big moment is very subtle. It can be a character change. In other words, the protagonist learns something or the problem comes to a head and they have to make a decision and become a different type of character. That moment is followed by the falling action. And we talked about falling action in What's a Story. It's not, sometimes falling action is very short and it leads to the end. So it's almost like you're wrapping up the story through the falling action, and finally the story wraps up in the end or the resolution. And that's when all things are resolved. So the Freytag triangle consists of 5 elements. Introduction, or in other words, rising action, introduction or exposition. It's called, it could be a synonym is exposition. Rising action. 3, climax. 4, falling action. And 5, the end or the resolution. I also want you to realize something. When you're reading short stories, sometimes you're going to find that short stories don't necessarily follow this map. So keep that in mind. Some short stories can be very short and only have 3 of these categories or elements in them. It could be resolution, it could be, or 4, 3 or 4 of them. So for example, it could be an introduction with a rising action, and the climax could actually be the resolution. The big moment happens at the very end and leaves you guessing. So that's the story map or the Freytag triangle. So let's remember that. It's a story map, and another group of words for story map is Freytag triangle, or it could also be called the story triangle. That's it for this segment of What's a Story, short story. And I would like you to rewatch this and fill out the homework sheet. Tomorrow this is due, and you need to put it into the finished work box when you first come into class. I will see you then. Have a good evening.